All right, so in this section, we want to talk about some of the challenges that are facing science. And to do that, we're going to start off with some introductions to some of our different terminologies. So, for example, technology is going to be the application of scientific knowledge to human interests. Biodiversity, which is a term you're going to see a lot in this chapter, is going to be the total number and relative abundance of species, so the variability of their genes and the different ecosystems in which they live. Extinction is simply the death of a species, and many biologists are going to be alarmed at the current high rate of extinction. So science is a systematic way of acquiring knowledge about the natural world. It's going to be very closely related to technology. Technology is simply the application of scientific knowledge to the interests of humans based on years of scientific research and advancements. However, these scientific endeavors are all often going to be met with a unique set of challenges. And so some of those challenges are going to be things like biodiversity and habitat loss. Biodiversity, like I said, is the total number and relative abundance of the species, the variability of their genes, and the ecosystems in which they live. It's estimated to be as high as 15 million species, but less than 2 million have actually been named and identified. And like we said, extinction is the death of the last member of a species or larger classification category, and it's estimated that 400 species are lost every single day due to human activities. So two of the most biologically diverse ecosystems, the rainforest and coral reefs, have been threatened by human activity. The canopy of the tropical forest supports orchids, insects, monkeys, and other organisms. The coral reef provides habitats for jellyfish, sponges, crabs, lobsters, sea turtles, moray, eels, fishes, any number of species. And destruction of these ecosystems can have a dramatic unintended impacts. Humans depend upon healthy ecosystems for food, medicine, and raw materials. The draining of the wetlands in Mississippi and the Ohio rivers worsened flooding. It ruined farmland. The destruction of the South American rainforest killed off many different species, and it decreased the availability of lumber, which we were desperately relying on, which is why those rainforests were being destroyed in the first place. So it's very important to protect these habitats, as research has shown that ecosystems cannot function properly unless they remain biologically diverse. Another thing that we are starting to see is the emergence and reemergence of diseases. Over the past decade, several new diseases have been in the news. The H5N1, the avian flu, the swine flu, H1N1, SARS, Ebola, COVID-19, that's the really big one right now. Where do these emerging diseases come from? A lot of time, they come from new or increased exposure to insects and animals. A lot of times we have to deal with, or they come from changes in human behaviors. So, for example, uses of technology. The Legionnaire's disease emerged in 1976 due to bacterial contamination of large hotel air conditioning system. This Legionnaire's disease is a waterborne disease. However, it can travel in water droplets, and it was actually spreading through an air conditioning system. It was being carried on the air, even though it is technically a waterborne disease. This is one of the reasons that we are wearing masks to avoid the contamination and the spread of COVID, because although it is waterborne, it's passed through saliva, those droplets can pass through the air, can survive in the air for very brief periods of time. This is why the mask is used to prevent the spread, because it can prevent the spread of water droplets from one individual to the next. Globalization, that leads to the transportation of diseases all over the world. This is why when we heard about the COVID outbreak, some of the first areas that were targeted for shutdown were travel places. The increase to globalization, the ability for humans to travel all over the world, has actually led to the rapid spreading of these diseases. Pathogens can also mutate. They can mutate and change hosts. The avian flu was originally thought to affect only birds, but a mutated strain jumped to infecting humans, and now new strains of avian flu resurface every few years. So this is why it's so important to check, as we are learning in this pandemic time, why it's so important to monitor and be aware of the spread of new and reemerging diseases. So that is a huge challenge facing scientists today. Climate change is another challenge that is facing scientists. This is defined as simply changes in the normal cycle of the Earth's climate due to human activities. These are primarily going to be due to the imbalance of chemical cycling of carbon. So typically, in a healthy ecosystem, carbon is going to be cycled throughout the ecosystem. However, due to human activities, more carbon is being released than is being removed. This increase is due in large part to the burning of fossil fuels. The burning of fossil fuels are huge carbon reservoirs that are buried deep in the earth, but when we burn those fossil fuels, we are removing them from the surface of the earth, from the crust of the earth, and releasing them into the atmosphere. The destruction of forests and their replacement by farmlands is a huge impact on our carbon cycling because we are losing our huge producers that are able to absorb that carbon out of the atmosphere. Increases in carbon dioxide cause temperature increases. This is what's known as global warming. This is going to be produced by the greenhouse effect. Global warming is simply changing the Earth's ecosystems, and a lot of this we're going to be discussing later on in the semester. All right, so that's chapter 1, section 1.4. So you should be able now to explain how new technology differs from scientific discovery, explain why the conservation of biodiversity is important to human society, and summarize how emerging diseases and climate change have potential to influence the entire human population.